Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to FTB Interactions. So since last episode, I've done a little bit of work, mainly just a little bit of building, but it's time. I'm not going to worry about, it's just some stuff up here, just kind of cleaning up some stuff, and starting to get some of this organized has been the main thing, and then I fixed up some of the pathways up here was the main thing. Some of the building. So this pathway here actually has proper blocks in it now that lead down into the next floor and so on. But anyways, what we're going to be doing today is, of course, this is going to be a big episode. I've been really excited about this. Originally, I said it was going to come out on Friday, but I don't know if that's going to be true or not, depending on how fast we get through everything, how fast I get it edited. I don't know if it was a realistic expectation. plus my mom's coming over on Friday, and so I don't know for sure if I'll get it done, but it might be Saturday, but if so, that's okay. So anyways, the very first thing we need to do, like I said, we're going to be focusing on the key stuff that's going to allow us to keep doing Thaumcraft at our base and not have to worry about Flux. And first and foremost, actually, let me go grab my thermometer so we can actually monitor the amount of flux that's in this chunk. There is another tool that, actually it's up here. Let me grab that. And that way we can monitor how much flux is in a chunk at a glance. But I will say that there is another tool that we're going to be making probably this episode to give us a better overview of flux in the surrounding area. But you can see right here we do have a little bit of flux in this chunk. So what we're going to do though, there's actually an entry here about flux. And you know, I've covered all this stuff in Enigmatica. We're going to be covering it again, but more focused on this stuff. Instead of it being over the course of a few episodes, we'll have most of it in this episode, maybe the episode following. But we're going to focus this stuff down. So this right here, let the flux build. You get this when you start getting a little bit of flux in a chunk. Okay? And in order for us to finish out the research, we're going to have to get the flux to be worse. There's actually two negative impact researches in this first tab. The first one being flux, and it basically leads to getting flux cleanup stuff. The other one is about instability, and that's how you're going to get your stabilizers, if I recall. You're going to have to get an unstable infusion to happen, and then it's going to trigger learning more about making it more stable. So, but what we're going to do here is I've got a bucket on me. Let me grab... Actually, it might be best to just pop up here, right over to here. And let's get ourselves something with a lot of aspects that's not really expensive on EMC, ideally. Just so we don't end up wasting a bunch of EMC to do this. Honestly, I'm going to say probably cobblestone, 5-in-1, yeah. We'll grab a few stacks of this, and let's grab our whale. And then let's pop down to here. And we're going to go into the sky block. This is where we're going to make the flux. Right? I did say a while back that we were going to flux out this island, you know, because we're not actually using it for much of anything. But I moved my crucible out of here. Okay, I got a cauldron, and I got a piece of Salus Mundus. And we'll just make a new... crucible here. I'm going to set it right there, I guess. Okay, so let's actually do this, that. Okay, so now what we're going to do, let's add our water in, and let's throw in, oh, I gotta wait for it to boil. Go, go, go. Basically, we're going to just make a whole bunch of flux. And basically just not even use the stuff that we've got. And there we go. You can see the flux just bumped up on this, which is a good sign. It's a good sign because it's a bad sign. It means that... whoops. I got to wait for this to... There we go. Haha. Okay, you can see there's 64 and 320. I don't know how much I can throw in there. Yeah, now it's bubbling over. So we'll go ahead and just release that. And then, boom, there's a bunch of flux in there now. And let's do it one more time. That way we can fill out this bar, if nothing else. Okay, so there, and release. And there we go. We got a filled up bar of flux. It can actually go higher, though. Yeah, see, there's a tear that has spawned up. Which, as this tear, basically the more flux you have, the larger this tear is going to get, and it's actually going to break blocks. Like, it just broke that block, and if you get inside of there, it damages you. Now, normally you can use a causality collapser to break it. You know, we did that in Enigmatica quite a bit to get some primordial pearls, but in this pack, those are disabled. You have to get up to the flux cleanup sponge, unless maybe you can find them in dungeons. I'm not for sure, but let's see. If we take a look here, we have let the flux build. We've done that. So let's go ahead and turn that in. And now, right here, we've got a flux rift. There we go. Research complete. Okay, now that we've got that done, the next thing I want to do, since we got the flux research done, which we're going to continue letting that build out a bit of flux in that area. But the next thing that I want to do is let me pop over. I don't know if I want to climb all the way up there, I guess. Let me go get some stone real quick. And this is actually something that we're going to be getting into here fairly soon, actually utilizing these. But right now I just need a little bit of these. If I recall, it can be any, I think. And actually, I guess in this pack, it's probably less common that you have these scanned. I think normally you would probably already have these scanned. But what we need to do is, let's trade out some of this for stone real quick. Because these crystals actually won't grow on grass, of course. You need some kind of smooth stone. They'll also grow on a lot of other types of stone. You know, over at Selway's base, we actually saw them growing on ore. But what we need to do is we need to get some crystals growing. And we're going to give these just a minute. I wonder, can I scan? I'm just going to scan some things. I actually probably don't need any theories or any, oh, what are they called? Observations? Yeah, observations. I don't have to look it up. I think I've pretty much probably already got all that I need. The observations are really simple. really simple to come by. So I do love the research in Thaumcraft 6 compared to Thaumcraft 4. That's not to say that I'm like, man, I love research, but I like it more. You know, I'm still ready for it to be over with. And I do love creative Thaumonomicons, just to skip all of that. But that's actually pretty early into the pack I'm working on. You can go pretty early on for the creative Thaumonomicons. You don't actually have to do all the research if you don't want to. If you don't mind doing the chain quest for it. But I still think it's better because you don't have to like grind up you know, different types and stuff. Okay, so we have some crystal clusters right here. And we got some research completed on ores. And now, that's actually this right here. And there's actually a crystal farming research, which we'll knock that out here in just a second. But we did get the ore research. And then now we have, there's the closing flux rifts, which we actually don't need that in this pack, but the flux cleanup is what we want. But we have to research V batteries before we can do that. And so that's the last thing that we're going to need for this. Let me grab all of these, and we'll go ahead and get the crystal farming, even though it's actually, crystal farming is not all that important in this pack. Because what crystal farming does is it allows you to make those crystal clusters. We'll go ahead and complete that. And now we can make these fire crystal clusters, and then we could place them. But in this pack, of course, it's cheaper just to get the ore, use the pure daisy, and then convert it, right? So this, not all that useful, because you're kind of just wasting Salus Mundus and Seeds and Vitreous and Vinculum and Ignis. I mean, if you get a V crystal, then technically you could have had a fire crystal. But those crystals that we just created, they'll spread naturally. Slowly, but naturally. So we're going to make some farms for those here pretty soon, so we just have them passively, you know, kind of generating. But, okay, so we need the V battery. And I can't remember where the V... I think it's... Actually, isn't it in Oromancy? Yeah, right here, V battery. Okay, this just takes a couple of observations. So easy enough. And we don't have to make one, we just have to we have to get the research for it. Okay, so now we have the flux cleanup. And we're going to need 2 theories in aromancy and a vial of Vidium Essentia, which I may actually have enough of that. I'm not for sure at the moment. Let's pop up here and find out. Yes, I actually have just enough. Perfect. And this is actually, once we get this set up, if you haven't watched my Enigmatica series, this is an excellent way to build up lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of free Vidium Essentia. You'll never need Vidium Essentia once you get this set up. You will be using other types of Essentia, but I tend to just use like stuff like Herba that you have tons of and you don't use for much of anything. But we will be we will be generating a whole bunch of Vidium here soon. Okay, so then I just need 2 theories in aromancy. Awesome. Okay, I've got some paper going actually. I think I've got ink sacks. I think I left them up here actually. But I did get some paper running, and I'm going to try to get those theories in aromancy real quick, and then I'll be back here in just a minute once I get those done, and we can get that research knocked out, and then get our flux cleanup stuff in place. Okay, I've got the 2 theories in aromancy, so we'll go ahead and turn this in and get our flux cleanup. It is going to consume our vial. It's going to teach us about a couple things that we can now make. The first up is the condenser, and it is this one right here, the Flux condenser from Thaumcraft. And we're going to have to make these things. We're also going to need some Flux condenser lattice. And it actually talks about it in depth here. And this makes, okay, this only makes 1 at a time. Ugh. All right. And then we're going to need 2 for this. Okay, so I need to make 3 flux condenser lattices for starters. So we're going to need silver screws, thaumium plates, Essentia filters, lots of fun stuff. Okay, so I'm going to need 6 thaumium plates. And I can't remember if I already have Percantio down here. I really don't want to I don't want to smelt anything in the Essentia smelter over here at the moment. So I'm probably going to pop over and use the crucible if I don't have Percantio, which it looks like I do not. So I'm going to have to make up some more thaumium real quick as well. Quite a bit. Well, maybe not quite a bit. Let's see. Okay, this doesn't use it. And we already have the alchemical construct that we need. Steel screws. That's actually not too bad. These are more expensive, I feel like, than the condenser itself. Okay, I think I've got everything together that we're going to need. I got some more air crystals going at the moment. And so there is our 3 Essentia filters. And then we need our flux condenser lattice. I've got this, I had this running. Pop over here. There's our 6 Certus quartz plates. And then our air crystals, which we can process these better. I'm just not worried about it because we're going to start farming these soon. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to get our flux condenser lattices. And there we go. And what's it missing? There's 100V, 3 air, 3 terra. Oh, because I don't have the air crystals in there. I got to place those. There we go. Okay, flux condenser lattice. And I'm going to need some more terra crystals. That's fine, because I've got to wait for that stuff to regen a little bit in between crafts. So let's go ahead and our terra infused. We'll get this going. And then I think the other craft takes 150, I want to say. For the flux condensed, no, it's 75. Okay, so we'll be good. Let's say that we can fix that. We can make more flux, or not more flux, more V in this available to us, but we won't have to for this. So we'll get into that soon, but not just yet, because we won't need it right now. Okay, this is actually being very, very slow to regenerate at the moment. So what I'm going to do is, one thing that we can do, because there's generally going to be like 100 plus V in a given chunk. And so what we're going to do, let's find a different chunk. Maybe this one over here. Yeah, there's 108 in here. So what we're going to do, and actually I could get a better V discount than what I've got if I wanted to make the armor for it, but not that worried about it. Let's go ahead and grab our flux condenser lattice. And then we'll come over to this chunk now. And that one's only got 71. There we go. And then there's our flux condenser. Alright. So now it's time to go set all this up. Yay. Let's toss all of that in there. And then we've got our flux condenser and our one flux condenser lattice. Now you can make additional lattices if you want. And it will talk about it in the Thaumcraft if you want to read more about that. I'm not going to be doing that, and the reason being is because if you have additional lattices, it does make it run faster, but it also makes it more expensive on Essentia cost. And I'd rather go for efficiency over speed, at least at the moment, you know. So this right here, right, this is the chunk that has 54. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up our flux condenser. We'll set it up right here, I think. Because I think this can feed directly into the jar, if I recall. Let me grab this jar, and we'll just set this up right here. And it goes on the bottom. That's where the Vidium Essentia is going to come out. And then what we'll do is we're going to take our lattice, we're going to put this on the top. Now, after it runs for a while, you'll notice in JEI there's clogged flux condenser lattice. Basically, after it runs for a while, it gets clogged, and what you do is you can just break it off and then replace it, and it'll clear that clog out, right? Or actually, you might be able, let me pull it up in here. You might be able to just like shift right click or something. It says you can click on the clogged lattice piece with a fresh one. But you can also, unless it's been fixed, you can also just break and replace it instead of making another flux condenser lattice. So, but let's go ahead and grab ourselves some Essentia. I'm going to go with Herba. I tend to always have a ton of Herba. It's very, very common and very cheap to use. And then what we're going to do, this thing does have to have some kind of Essentia. Doesn't matter what kind as long as it's not Vidium. You don't want to feed Vidium Essentia into your condenser because that would pretty much defeat the purpose. And I think it actually causes some negative effects. I've never tried it because the book says not to, but it just makes sense that you don't want to feed it Vidium. So, but then we just attach that, and you can see it's starting to drain that. And with just one lattice, I believe it is 5 Essentia for every 1 Essentia that it cleans. And if we look right here, I think it was at 55, now it's at 54. It's not going to be super fast with only one lattice piece, but it actually, you know, it doesn't have to be super fast. This area is chunk loaded. It's going to run nonstop, and it's going to start cleaning up these chunks. And yeah, now it's down to 53. And so what's happening is it's slowly cleaning this up, and you can see we have 1 Vidium Essentia in here now. And it hasn't actually consumed all of that. It actually has like a buffer that it fills up that stores, I want to say it's like 60, maybe 60, 70, something like that, Essentia that it stores in there. So here in a second, we should see it drop down to 40 in this, and we'll get a second Vidium, and then the flux in this chunk is 52. There we go. It just dropped, it jumped up to 2 Vidium, 40 Herba. So it is consuming 5 Essentia per bit of flux that is cleaned up. And if you want it to be faster without increasing the cost, what I suggest you do, instead of doing a bunch of lattices on top, because it gets diminishing returns on speed increase, and the cost gets progressively higher on the Essentia. So what I would suggest you do is multiple flux condensers, each with 1 lattice. I prefer the 1 lattice. You may be different. If you want to do multiple lattices, it talks about it in depth in here. So, you know, if you're interested in that, I suggest you give that a read. But this is the setup that I tend to like. Now, later on, we will automate this to some degree. Basically, we're going to have, well, we might automate it to some degree. We'll see. We might have Herba Essentia that goes here, and then excess Herba goes into a jar that feeds into this. Anyways, we're going to let that run for a while. Before too long, I mean, right now we're at 49. It's slowly dropping. But, you know, by next episode, it's going to be at like 0. So, and there is better ways later on to clean up flux, faster ways like the Creative Flux Sponge. But for now, this is great. And it's something that can run passive and keep our chunks from ever getting to the point that we're going to have negative effects spawning. Okay, so now that that's in place, that's step 1. We've got flux cleanup. I'm happy with it. I am planning to add more flux condensers. I'll make some more of these, but not right this second. I'm in no rush, but eventually we might have, you know, one setting here, one setting there, and maybe even two over here. Maybe like flux condenser, and then a jar that feeds them. We'll see. But for right now, one is good. But the next step that's going to help out a lot is upgrading our Essentia Smeltery, because right now we have the default one. And it actually talks about, I can't remember the percentages of waste in each of these, but it tells right here, it says a small amount of Essentia is converted into flux roughly 20% of the time. Okay, so about 20% in the standard Essentia smelter, about 20% of the Essentia that you smelt is just being converted into flux. That's not good, right? If you look at the Thaumium Essentia smelter, it's a 90% efficiency. So instead of being 20% of the flux, or 20% of the Essentia being turned into flux, we're now up to 90%. So only 10% of that is becoming flux. So that right there is a very good upgrade, but we're going to make it even better. And then eventually we'll get into this one right here, but we have to get void metal. And I actually need to see, I imagine void metal is, I don't know if it's going to be default, which if it's default, there's not too much maybe gating us from it. No, it's blast furnace with a void seed and destructive wheel crystals. Which actually, I think we have some void seeds, but we're going to have to get 480 EU per tick. Temperature of 1700, which I think is actually copper nickel, right? I think copper nickel gets up to 1700. I was thinking. Yeah, it gets up to 1800 Kelvin. So we're good on the heat, but we have to get up to 480 EU per tick, which we could actually do if we wanted to make multiple MV turbines feeding it. But we're going to have to get wheel crystals and liquid nightmares, which is grains of infinity or drops of evil. So we could do that without too much issue. But let's go ahead and upgrade our Essentia Smeltery. And we're going to be going for this one, which we're going to need some Thaumium plates, some brass plates, and the rest of that we've got. Okay, you can see this is actually up to 23 Vidium. It's probably going to be out of Essentia here soon, because I am out of ARPA, but that's fine. I've got some other stuff I could throw in there, but I'm probably like that. I've got 60 of that. Honestly, stuff like Terra is really good because it's just cobblestone. At the end of the day, that's all it takes. But anyways, I did get 25 per Cantio. I smelted up a half stack of barrier stones. I know there's better methods for it, but I'm not using those because they have a lot of added Essentia types, and I'm trying to keep it to a minimum on Essentia that's being created at the moment, just because we're about to upgrade this. And I don't want to make any Essentia that's not necessary at the moment. But this was down to 33. Now it's at 37, and it has cleaned up a couple. But okay, so there's our Terra and our Percantia that we need. And let me pop up here real quick. I need to get some steel. And I think I've got the alchemical brass that we're going to need. And we probably won't use the crucible that's over there. I already brought it back, you know. I don't think we're going to be using that old crucible anymore. So let's set this to Thaumium. And we're going to attach a warded jar there. And a warded jar there. And that way it can start making our Thaumium for us. Bum, bum, bum. Awesome. And honestly, I mean, I probably made more magic tallow than I needed, but that's basically because it's cheap. I could have got away with probably producing a little bit less flux early on, but I figured, I'll just make a stack of it. Also, I have some exciting stuff coming up. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but where'd I get these? I guess I didn't put them back up after I used them, I'm assuming. There's some exciting stuff coming up soon on the patron servers. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet, but probably in the next few days you'll find out. So something new. Something new. There we go. There's our 5 Thaumium plates. Okay, so now we should be good to go upgrade our Essentia Smeltery. This one does take 250 V though. So we're going to need one other thing for this to work. And what we're going to do is, actually, if you look right here, I've got to get a theory and aromancy real quick, of course. Like, chances are, by the time I get to the creative Thaumonomicon, I'm going to have a lot of the research already done. But the thing is, the creative one of the really nice things about being able to get the creative Thaumonomicon is some of the stuff that's normally you can't research, we'll be able to research. Not to mention we'll just be able to get full out completion of things, which of course is always nice. Hey, Armancy, right out the gate. I'm still going for the free method, so I got some warp from that. That's fine. My warp's actually not too bad at the moment. But the free method, you could get more per paper if you actually used items. But the free method, of course, doesn't take any items, which is kind of nice. I got a little bit of warp there. I need to make a sanity checker here soon. I'm going to take that one. That's not a bad haul. There has been times where I've gotten like 3 or 4 points. If you're using items, it's actually really, really easy to get 3 to 4 points of a single thing. But using the free method, you're usually looking at best around 2 points. I actually got a 200% Aromancy between cuts. But there we go. We got three theories, and now we can get our research for the workbench charger. And so I want to make that, assuming it's not too expensive. I mean, you can go the armor route where you go for like V discounts, and it's actually possible to find chunks where you wouldn't have to have a workbench charger for this. But the workbench charger is actually really, really nice. We're going to need 200 V for this, though. And we need infused wood columns. We can pull this off, though. It's just I may have to go out and find... I may actually have to go to the Magic Forest biome. That actually might fix it. But this actually is not too expensive. I was expecting it to be a little bit more expensive. I will take it. Okay, I've got the infused wood, and then we'll get the infused wood planks. And I'm just going to leave that liquid starlight there for right now. And then we'll get our columns. And I think that's everything. Oh, the slab. I think I have one down here, maybe. This has to be done in the cutting saw. Okay. Well, I've got the great wood planks, and then let me grab the arcane workbench. And we're going to need 3 air and 3 ordo, which I've got the ordo. That's not a problem, but I need the air real quick. Which I've got some crystals growing right here. But let me get this going. Okay, there's 3 of those. And then we're also going to want our thermometer. And that should be good. Okay, so what we're going to do is... let me actually pop down... we're going to pop over to our Magic Forest real quick. Not sure if it's about to be nighttime. Yeah, see this chunk, if you look there at the... no, back... right here. This chunk has 334 V in it. So, I mean, you can naturally find the chunks I have over there are actually really, really low. Like, abnormally low. And like a little over 100. Magic Forests are great, though, because you're looking at generally having 2 to 3, even sometimes 400 V in a single chunk. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to drop down our Arcane Workbench right here. You can see we have 334 V available. Drop in that. And... drop in those, and then we're going to get our arcane or our workbench charger. There we go. Because actually in Thaumcraft 6, it's actually kind of defeated the need for having to have the armor and stuff that you would normally want to have for the V discount. You actually really don't need it within Thaumcraft 6. To be perfectly honest, unless you just want it, you know. And some of the later V costs, I know some of the stuff, I can't remember if it's base Thaumcraft or an add-on. But I know there's some stuff that takes like 600 V and whatnot. So sometimes you do get up to some high costs. But what the workbench charger does is you can see we have 237 in this area. But if we throw the workbench charger on there, we now have 2,694 V available in this table. The reason being is the workbench charger is actually going to pull from the surrounding chunks. So it's going to pull from a total of 9 chunks. So this chunk is the one that we're currently in. It's pulling from that, but it's also pulling from this one, and this one, and this one, and so on. And I mean, you can see all of these have, like there's 266 there. There is 303 there. 265 there. which I need to get back into this area. I got sidetracked and I haven't been working over here as much. But what we're going to do is, since we're already over here, let's go ahead and make our new Essentia Smeltery, the Thaumium. No, we're not going to be making it. I got to pop back over. Okay, now we should be good to make the Thaumium Essentia Smeltery. So there's that. There's our Ignis crystals, and there we go. And that, of course, is going to bump our efficiency by, the 10%. So instead of having 20% waste, we're now having only 10% waste. But we're going to make it even better. We are indeed. So let's go ahead and throw this thing down. It's going to be a while before, probably a little while before we can get the next tier, Essentia Smeltery. That one, if I recall, bumps it to a 95% efficiency rating. So we'd only have a 5% waste. Okay, I've been getting some things prepped for the next step. And I will say that this is going to be coming out Saturday, I'm positive. Just because it's actually a lot of it's not really taking a long time, but long enough that I don't think I'm going to have it edited for Friday. But right here, my Flux condenser lattice did clog up. So we're going to go ahead and just break this off. And, oh, we can't. Used to, you could just break it. But, or no, actually, you know what? I've got Silk Touch on this. That might be part of the reason. Nope, that's not part of the reason. Okay, so I'll have to make a new one, I suppose. That's okay. That's okay. But anyways, before we do that, what we're going to do, I mean, the flux in this area is only at 33 at the moment. So, and I'll continue getting that down. This one is, what, 32.2, which isn't terrible either. But I don't really want it to get much higher than that. So, but you'll notice the flux does kind of balance to some degree across its neighboring chunks. So as we clean up one chunk, usually you'll notice that a lot of the flux from the surrounding chunks gets pulled into the chunk that you're cleaning, and it actually, in a way, it cleans the surrounding chunks too. So, but it takes quite a bit of flux before you actually start seeing any negative effects. So even having it at 30 is not bad. But we will continue cleaning that up a bit. But the fact that you can't just break these off anymore does increase the cost of running this. But it's still not terrible. Basically just taking some thaumium, really being the worst part. I mean, it takes a bit of resources, but it's not bad. But anyways, I did get some stuff prepped up. And what we're going to be doing, by the way, if you need brass, like I ran out of alchemical brass, but we can make just the regular brass ingots now. Because we have an alloy smelter, and it is just 3 parts copper, 1 part zinc. For 4 brass. So we can make it that way, and that's kind of how I've been making it. But what we're going to be making is vents. Auxiliary venting ports. And I actually need these as, oops, drop my sword. I need these as plates. I'm going to need 6 of them. Which, okay, yeah. I thought I'd already ran them, but I wasn't sure. That's the leftover, that 14 is. Because I made 20 of it. But what we're going to be making is the auxiliary venting port. Basically, with your smelteries, there's add-ons. You know, I mentioned these a couple episodes ago that we were going to be getting into these. And there is 3 different add-ons you can do. There's bellows, and I can't remember where the bellows are in the book where it talks about them. But basically what bellows do is they increase the speed that it runs. The speed that it runs and the speed that it breaks down that Essentia and sends it up. There is also the slurry pumps, and basically the way these work is you attach them to your smeltery, and you can attach alembics to them, and they basically give you other ports that can also be pumping out Essentia. So in a way they kind of speed it up, and they also give you more access ports. I will say that the bellows and the slurry pump, we're probably not going to be using those in this series. I think in Enigmatic I used 2 venting ports and 1 bellows per smeltery. Because 2 is kind of the ideal point for venting ports, and we're going to talk about those here in just a second. But I think in this pack I am going to, I think I'm going to be using 3 venting ports, and I'll talk about those. But I will say that the slurry pumps and the bellows, there's actually an add-on for Thaumcraft that gives you better Essentia smelteries beyond just the base 3, and I've actually got that in the pack I'm working on, and it actually takes it up 3 tiers higher than just going to the void metal smeltery. But of course, they're progressively more expensive, taking different types of metal and things like that. But with those, you can actually get up to 100% efficiency, so you don't have to worry about the flux byproduct production from your Essentia smelters. But what we're going to be going with, since we don't have access to that, of course, we're going to be going with just 3 auxiliary venting ports. And what these do, we have, with our new smeltery, we have a 90% efficiency rate. So that means, basically what that means is whenever we smelt something that has X amount of Essentia, so for example, if you take a look at this, it has 135 metallum, 39, that's 33 ordo, 17 vitreous, and 17 lucrum. What that means, whenever I smelt that up, is out of all those Essentia types, I'm going to get 90% of what's listed there. That's, it's RNG, so you may end up with more. It's not, it's not an exact science, but basically 90% of the time, when it makes, say, 1 Essentia, you're going to get that Essentia, but the other 10% of the time, it's going to be created as waste products. And so that's your loss rating. So I'm going to be losing 10% of the Essentia that I'm actually smelting up. And that's going to be just directly turned into flux and pumped into the world. Not good. What the auxiliary venting ports do, though, is they're an attachment, and I'll show you how we plug these things up. They're an attachment for your smeltery, and you can have up to 3 attachments per smeltery. And basically they just hook onto the side. And what the auxiliary venting ports do is basically they will give you a chance, based on how many that you have, with diminished returns, and I'll talk about the exact probability on those, but they're going to give you a chance that whenever flux is generated by your smeltery, instead of it actually producing flux whenever you produce waste, instead it just produces steam that doesn't add any flux. It has no harmful side effects to your environment. So instead of producing that flux, you're just going to get some steam. You're still going to waste that Essentia, but you're not going to waste it as flux. It's just wasted. It's no byproduct. And like I said, they have diminished returns. So if you have, say, 1 auxiliary venting port on your smeltery, whenever it creates waste, you're going to have a 66.66% chance that it's going to create flux. Okay, so it's basically going to reduce by a third of the time it's going to produce steam instead of flux. If you have 2, this is where the diminished returns start coming into play, you have a 44.44% chance that you're going to produce flux. So now we're under 50% chance that you're going to make flux, and most of the time you're going to be making steam. Once you hit 3 venting ports, you really start hitting that diminished return. So that's why I say 2 is probably ideal amount, because you're not getting as big of a loss on that flux chance whenever you're using 3 compared to the changes between 1 and 2, but with 3 you're going to have 29.63% chance to create flux. So you're really only looking at about a fourth of the time that waste is generated that it's actually going to be making flux. All right, and that's still, on top of that, that's still only happening 10% of the time, or 10% of the Essentia that you smelt down. So let's go ahead. I'm not actually worried about the bellows, though, because I'm not that concerned about the speed, to be perfectly honest. But I am going to need some more alchemical constructs since I only have 2. I did get the stuff together to make another batch of these, and they do craft 2 at a time. And I need the, I think it was the aqua, and I think I've already got them placed down. I do. Let's go ahead and grab those. I think in the next episode we're going to be getting our V crystal farms up and going, because I'm pretty happy with our progress this episode, and we're only about halfway done. Well, maybe 40 minutes or something in at the moment, but let's go ahead and get these. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And then we'll pop up here and we'll attach these. And this is going to be about as good as our smeltery is going to be for now, until we get up to the void metal one, which, like I said, I think that's a 95% efficiency, if I recall correctly. So, and I am going to clean this up. Like I said, this is, which actually I guess this can go here and here. And I'm not sure. I'm probably going to do little tiles just to cover right in here and make it I don't know. I'm going to see. But anyways, we can take our auxiliary venting ports and we can just attach these there, there, and there. And they're installed. So now we have a pretty good shot at not generating a lot of flux while using our smeltery, right? Because 90% efficiency, 10% waste. That 10% waste, only a 29.63% chance that it's going to create any flux. So not bad. And then once we move up to the void metal, it'll be even better. It's going to be very uncommon that we get flux at that point. Okay, so now that that's in place, let's move on to the next thing. We're just kind of moving through, covering a lot of things today. That's just going to make our lives a whole lot easier. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make the flux transfer, or the Essentia transfer, a bit better. Because right now we have to pull up the bottles and we have to move it over here and dump it in, and it's no fun. I don't like it. So what we're going to be getting into is a wonderful thing. Of course, you could use piping, but piping, it tends to get backed up and it's very slow and wonky. Most people don't really care for tubes. Well, let's be honest. Most people don't like Essentia tubes. Even, they're just not fun. So what Thaumcraft 6 has is advanced Essentia transport. This stuff is wonderful. You have the filling Essentia and the emptying Essentia. And the emptying one is the one that draws Essentia from jars within range, places it within tubes or devices. Okay, we want the filling Essentia transfuser, which is crafted like this. Once again, see, lots of V being used today, but this is actually fairly cheap. I think the only thing I'm going to have to make is a dispenser, which is probably just cobblestone and redstone. Default recipe. Or that's the dropper, but yeah. Okay, so we need a bow. Alright, let me get the stuff together for this real quick. Okay, so we're going to grab our alchemical construct, and let's get our filling Essentia transfuser. Pow. And the emptying one is, okay, it's a hopper instead of a dispenser. So there's that. And then what we're going to do, and this room should be spaced out, because this has a range of, I believe, 16 blocks out. And I think it's 16 blocks off to the side, but I could be wrong. If not, it's not going to fill stuff up over here. We're about to test it and find out. But what we're going to do is we're going to put this right there. Okay. And basically, let's take, for example, let me grab this. And I grabbed 64 barrier stones so we could give this a test. But for example, if I set this right over here, and I was to come over here and start smelting up some stuff. Let me throw this into there. And let's toss in, say, 16 of these barrier stones. You can see that it's pumping that Pt.1 up into here, or that Percantio, I mean, and it's sending it over to here. So you can see we have 16, so we got 100% efficiency on that. Awesome. That means no flux was generated. Awesome. But we created 16 Percantio from that. Okay. Now, if we were to grab this and we were to move it over here, this is what I'm curious about. If I have this setting way over here, which, by the way, one thing to bear in mind is if your jars have labels, they will not accept any other types of Essentia. So, for example, even though my herba jar is emptied, it cannot accept anything because it has a label. And there you go. And also with the priority with this, if I recall, the priority system for Thaumcraft tends to work on the basis of the first priority is jars with Essentia in them that have a label. So if I'm smelting up, say, Victus, it's going to send it over to here because it has a label and it's got that, even if I had an empty jar sitting over here. Secondary, it sends it to empty jars with labels. And then thirdly, it'll send it to just empty jars. If I recall, that's how that works. And maybe it's empty jars with Essentia and then empty jars without us, or non-labeled jars with Essentia and then empty jars with no label, I think, something like that. But okay, but let's try dumping, say, 24 of this into here. Okay, it will not reach over to there. I'm actually kind of curious to see how much efficiency... Oh, wait. Yes, it did. It has found it. Perfect. Okay, so it will cover the whole room. And that'll be true for this one, because that's the farthest point that can possibly be at, is over here. So we lost a little bit of Essentia on that, but not too bad. So awesome. This does work. I was hoping that would work. I was like, I think it does like 16 blocks. I think it does 16 blocks away and 16 blocks in either side of it, because this is about 16 blocks. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this would be 12 blocks away. And I'm assuming that it would still work here, which is 13 blocks away. I'm pretty sure it would, because technically it's closer there, but it's farther on that direction, I guess. But it takes it a second to find it, you'll notice. There we go. It's found it, and it's sending it. Perfect. Okay, so this room works. Because basically what my idea is, we're going to have a smeltery there and a smeltery there, and it's going to feed all the jars in this area, right? And then things will change a little bit once we get into thermic energistics, but I mean, that's still the general idea. So out of those 64 barrier stones, we only lost 3 with our new, more efficient smeltery. Hey, that's awesome. And I'm just going to move this back over here. And we had 33 flux, and now we have 34. So only 1 point of that Essentia that failed turned into flux. Not bad. Not bad at all. I will take it. It's a lot more efficient than it was, so I'm happy. And that means I can start filling this area out with Essentia. That's why I've been holding out on generating just a lot of different types of Essentia. That's why I haven't been smelting up like the crystal. Because ideally I would probably use crystal stuff for making that Percantio. Because, you know, I can make crystal sticks or crystal chunks. They have 12, but it also has Census and it has Ordo that I don't need. And so then I'm generating extra Essentia, and I was worried about extra flux. So that's up and running. Awesome. And then, yeah, let me get some stuff together, because I'm going to show you how which I'm not... This is 16 blocks away, so it would still be missing these on this end. I could put obscure Essentia types over here. That would work. But then again, I still need to switch the side. Okay, I'll be back here in a minute. I'm going to get some stuff together. And I'm going to get a lattice. And then I might get an emptying transfuser, because I could put an emptying transfuser on this and it would basically pull from these jars. So I might get that. But if I do, I'm going to get another piece of Salus Mundus so I can switch it. I actually want the chest and the icon on this side and the transfuser on that side. And then I would probably have to make this be like really obscure types of Essentia. But I guess technically the transfuser would be in this block space, so it would actually go out to, if that's the case, I think it would go out, it would draw in Essentia up to this distance. So it would just be these two. I'd need obscure Essentia types. So I could use something like Draconium and you know, stuff that you just don't use. You actually don't use Draconium for much of anything, and there's one of these is actually a spare slot, so we'll just put something random in there, and then we'll have a couple obscure ones on that side. But anyways, I'll be back here in just a minute. Okay, I got this laid out. Our emptying Essentia transfuser. And these things are wonderful. I'm just hoping it works at the range that I'm hoping that it works. I will say they work just like the filling ones, so they're going to have like a 16 block, and I think it's 16 each direction. So if... I forgot the Salus Mundus. Okay, let me go grab the Salus Mundus. Okay, but I think they should reach out to about this point. I think. We're about to find out. But what I want to do, let me pull up this, and let me pull up this. I've got a Madoc. I don't feel like moving it to my hotbar. And we're going to set this chest up right there. And we're going to pull off this, which is going to deconstruct the multi-block, but that's fine. And then what we're going to do is take our Salus Mundus, and we're just going to right-click here. There we go. Because I want it formed in this direction. and we're going to say you're going to make thaumium. And of course you could put a hopper on there and it could feed the items down. We're not going to do that. Eventually we will automate these, and we're going to get into mnemonic matrices and stuff like that, but they're just not needed until we start automating. What we're going to do is if we take and we put steel in here, and we take this emptying Essentia transfuser, and we attach this thing, say right, I don't know if I want it up here or right there. I'm going to put it right here. We put it right there, and we give it just a second. It's going to have to find all of its, basically all the jars that it's going to be pulling from. But we should start seeing it start grabbing things. It actually might not be able to see that. If I move this to there, which I think it does, it get Percantio first? It gets the Percantio first. Okay, so the Percantio is probably too far away for it. Is probably what it is. So if I put the Terra there, and if I pull up the Percantio and I move it to here, let's say, there we go. It's grabbing the Percantio and it's grabbing the Terra, and it's pulling them in, and the steel ingot has become a piece of thaumium. Okay, now so I guess the last 3 slots, at least in the case of the alchemy system, because we will use the emptying Essentia transfusers in other places, like the Golem's work table is another one that will want an emptying Essentia transfuser. But at least in the case of the thaumatoriums, we will want these last 3 slots, I guess, to be just random stuff. If I pull this up and I move it over to this side, it should still be able to see it. That's why I brought some extra steel with me, so I could do some testing. But if I throw that into there, and we give it a minute, this one, that side, I noticed it takes a little bit longer to find it. There we go. It's pulling it, and it's pulling that. And this should now be thaumium. You'll notice that the range that it has to pull, it doesn't matter, because even though it has to pull it from way over there, which is actually kind of cool, because whenever this stuff's running, you'll see those, like, those phew things coming through, right? But for example, if I throw this in here, we can see it. Look at that. And these will be like floating around in the room, like little bursts of that whenever it crafts. And it's cool because they actually work their way around blocks, as you'll notice. See, it kind of got stuck on that one. But it doesn't actually impact the speed. I mean, that stuff's already all made, because as soon as it starts sending it from these jars, this has already received it. The visual part is just for looks. It doesn't actually have to get there. So we can put it as far away as possible, and it's not going to hurt anything. So basically, I'm just going to have to use these last, just 4 slots on each side. So 8 different types of just basically Essentia that we're not really going to be using for alchemy, which honestly, there's a lot of Essentia that you really just don't use in truth. So it's not really going to hurt anything. And I believe you can actually put an emptying Essentia funnel right there, transfuser, on the Flux condenser, but honestly I don't suggest it, because it will just eat through all of your different Essentia types, just cleaning up Flux. So, but I did make some more Essentia filters, so we're just going to take these, and if we just, this should work if we just right click it, yeah. And you'll notice it adds a new filter. It does consume 1. But we also get a Vidium V crystal whenever we do that. So, yay. And that is now cleaned back out. So, I mean, it's going to clean about, it honestly, it ranges. It's all chance. I've had it do like 60 or 70 something on Enigmatica before it needed changing. So, it really just depends on your luck. I got 28 on that last one, which really isn't all that bad. Plus, I mean, you do get the Vidium V crystal, so it's not a total loss. It's just gold, silver wood, and wool. But it does increase the cost of running this, but not by that much in truth. So if you're worried about the cost, then with it being Greg Tech, especially, if you're worried about the cost of a little bit of gold, then you need to just mine a little bit, I think. So, but the plan is we're going to have like a thaumatorium there, a thaumatorium here, thaumatorium here, and here. Now, technically, you would probably want these spaced out too if you wanted more mnemonic matrices, because you can't have a mnemonic matrix here and a mnemonic matrix on the thaumatorium in that slot and them take up the same block space. but it's more for looks, not so much efficiency. So we will have these kind of crammed together, and we're not going to put pneumonic matrices on these sides in those cases. But it's actually not a major loss, because pneumonic matrices each add 2 recipes, and it's not like we have that many recipes we need in these things, I don't think. So I think it'll be good with that setup, I do believe. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, so now that stuff's in place, now we have easier Essentia filling on the thaumatoriums. We have Essentia emptying on the smeltery. We have better cleanup of our flux. I mean, we're down to 32 at the moment, and we smelted down an entire stack of barrier stones and only got 1 flux. Which, granted, barrier stones don't have a lot of Essentia in them, but even still, that just kind of gives you an idea of what we're working with at the moment, and it will get better. Now, another thing that I want to get, and I can never remember the name of this thing. It's got a funny name. I think it's under nope, it's under, what is it under? Artifice? Yeah. The Thalmic diopter. I want to make one of these. These things are kind of useful. They're not a must-have. If you want to run around with a thermometer, you can. And you can just run around and be like, oh, I've got this much, this much V and this much flux in each chunk. You can do that. But Thalmic diopter is just kind of better for that, I feel like. So let me get the stuff together. I'm just going to need some arcane stone, V resonator, iron plates, and a thermometer, all of which I've pretty much got everything prepped for. So I'll be back here in just a second. Okay, I took some of that cinnabar dust, and I've got that. I turned it into cinnabar, basically 1 dust per cinnabar. But then we can take this cinnabar. I'm making quicksilver, because we're going to need that here in a second. You can also, there's a couple other ways that you can make it, but this makes 3 to 1. And realistically, I mean, I've got 1100. I don't have to, like, almost 1200. I don't have to go for, like, max efficiency, but I'm not worried about it. It's pretty easy to make it that way. Okay, so I think I've got everything together for the diopter. There's a V resonator, and then there is our Thalmic diopter. And there's one other thing that I want to make. This is going to be the last 2 things that we make for this episode. I want to go ahead and cover these because these are also important for our continued advancements within Thaumcraft. We didn't get into stabilizers this episode, but we are going to be in the next episode, I assure you. But I want to get a piece of mirrored glass, and then I want to take said mirrored glass, and let me get some brass nuggets, and we're going to make ourselves a sanity checker. Just because it's going to help us out. And we're going to get into the arcane spa and soap here soon as well. So just a heads up. But the sanity checker, basically we can see how insane we are. The dark purple there, that is permanent warp. Which basically generally it comes from like research. And so you've learned about the arcane, and that's forever in your mind. Okay, that's never going away. And the more, basically, if you look at your Thaumonomicon, and let's say we look at the Eldritch tab, and we look right here, it says mostly harmless for this research. So if I get this, I'm going to get a little bit of warp. And then if that one's mostly harmless, this one was, I think, minor. But depending, I think, brain in a jar, well, that one does have warp. It just doesn't show how much it is. Well, these have warp. You can see there's like purple auras around them. That means they have warp. It's just not telling us how bad it is. One's temporary warp and one's, I don't remember. But anyways, dark purple means it's there forever. That lighter colored purple means that it's there, and technically it's there forever, but it can be washed off. Once we start getting into soap, which we're going to be doing that soon enough, we're basically going to push on. Well, it's kind of strange because you actually start with Eldritch unlocked in this pack. I guess. I don't remember ever really unlocking it. I just had it. I mean, I have got a Crimson Rites book, but I haven't got... Oh, I did get the Crimson Rites and delving into the Eldritch. So maybe I unlocked it. I can't remember. So really, I could get rid of my warp now. I don't really have the warp, though. I don't feel like to have gotten that. I'm not sure. But anyways, that purple there, it can be washed off once you get into sanitizing soap. Your sanity soap. You can see right here it says when used it has a small chance of reducing non-permanent warp and will remove all temporary warp. Okay, that's the other two. There's permanent warp, non-permanent warp, and temporary warp. That light purple there is non-permanent, which means it's going to be there until it gets washed off with soap. That's the only way to get rid of it. Temporary warp it can just fall off. If you use soap, it's going to wash off all of it, but it can also just fall off over time. That's why I don't have any, just because it's just falling off on its own, right? And you won't. And the nice thing is with your sanity, which the bar can actually go. Well, I can't move it over here, but even if you fill this bar up, it can actually go above and beyond that. Because I know in Enigmatica, I got pretty insane there for a while and finally ended up having to go through almost a stack of sanity soap to get rid of it. But it had actually went above and beyond the bar, and it had started filling up the bar again. And the more insane you get, the more dangerous it gets, because you start getting Eldritch Guardian spawning, and the more insane you are, the more that can spawn. I've seen as many as 8 at a time spawn from one encounter, or one little event. So you do kind of want to I just want to keep an eye on that. And since we've already got the Eldritch research unlocked, I don't think there's all that much need for us to go really insane in this pack. Generally, Eldritch, I want to say it doesn't unlock until you're like near the top, I think. But, or at least that's how it always was in Thaumcraft 4. Remember, this is only my second time going through Thaumcraft 6 in survival. So, but yeah, so I just kind of want to keep an eye on that. We are going to get into sanity soap, and eventually we're going to get that sanity back down to reasonable levels so we don't have any negative effects. I actually haven't been getting many. You don't really get many until you pass that first gold bar. There for a while I was actually carrying rotten flesh because I was getting unnatural hunger and the blurred vision, but I haven't gotten up to where I'm seeing like spider swarms and getting Eldritch Guardians and things like that. I did get sun scorched one time, and but I haven't actually gotten all that insane. But I also haven't gotten all the this research yet either. So okay, so there's that. The other thing, the Thaumic Diopter, what I want to do with this, and these are basically, both of these are just kind of utility things so that we can kind of keep an eye on what's going on within our base, more or less. What we're going to do is we're going to set up our Thaumic Diopter like right here, and we can actually right click this and it's going to change the visuals. But what this does, this right here is basically it's showing like a radius of chunks. And I can't remember, I think it's a 7x7, I want to say. Because I think maybe it's more than that. But anyways, what it does is it shows you the V in the chunks in your surrounding area. Actually, I think each one of these little squares is a chunk. Right? I don't know, I think that's center point. I can't remember. But anyways, you can see there's actually a lot of V over in this one. Not as much where we're at, but we have been crafting with it, so that's probably a lot of the reason why it's a bit lower here in the center, because that's where we're at, that's where we've been crafting. If we right click, which is actually what I'm going to leave it on, this shows you the flux in the areas whenever it's purple like this. So you can see there's a little bit of flux here near the center, and that would be these chunks right here. This would be where we're actively at. Now with the thermometer, of course, we can get a numerical value. So this is 32, and it's not going down right now. Of course, that's because there's probably no V available for it to use. So let's grab... I'm going to be smelting up a lot more stuff between episodes, but I guess like Ignis would be a fine one to use. So let's drop that right there and let it start eating some of that Ignis so it can continue cleaning up. My goal is to get this flux down to 0 between episodes, because there's no reason for us to have flux moving forward. And honestly, the majority of the flux that you generate in your base is tied to smelting. That's the majority of it. I mean, occasionally there can be, if you have a really unstable infusion, you can make some flux through that. But for the most part, most of your flux is coming from the Smeltery. And there's also doing like the, what's that one furnace called? Infernal Furnace? Yeah, I don't have to grab the book. Infernal Furnace. If you're using that, it can create a little bit of flux. And there's some machines that can create a little bit, but it's all it's all minute amounts. Once you get up to where you have flux condensers and flux lattices, even just one, but ideally, a couple that are running with constant V feeding to them, or constant Essentia, then you're going to be fine. But like I said, it's very, very difficult to flux out your base. I know it's a common fear, but it's actually extremely difficult to do it. And once you hit this point, it's about impossible. Unless you just totally neglect giving this Essentia and just walk away and forget it. I mean, you would have to be running this thing, I guess, non-stop, just making Essentia in this, probably even, maybe even having 2 of them, just non-stop, creating Essentia to really get to a point where it's dangerous, and that's assuming that you're only running 1 flux condenser with 1 lattice. I mean, it's actually very, very difficult to flux out your base. Basically, with Thaumcraft, the main thing is just use some common sense and don't rush it. Take your time, get the proper stuff, like what I showed you this episode. Get that stuff set up, and you'll be fine. I mean, now it's downhill. Basically, we need to stabilize this, and we're golden. Everything's good then, once this is stabilized. So we're going to be doing that next episode. Aside from that, like I said, there'll be some other ways that we'll clean up flux in areas later. Next episode, we'll get the stabilizers up and going, and we'll start making... We'll probably spend one more episode right now on Thaumcraft. We'll start getting into the meat of Thaumcraft. We'll get those stabilizers down, and then we'll just have some fun for the rest of the episode in Thaumcraft, making some miscellaneous things and whatnot. But like I said, once the matrix is like really stabilized, we're going to be good. I mean, at that point, there's really nothing bad that could happen with Thaumcraft moving forward. We have everything in place, and our room is set up just right, and I just need to make more water jars, make more labels, and then start infusion crafting and alchemy crafting, and maybe get golems up and going, and just lots of things like that. But yeah, so I'm going to end this episode out here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any questions about flux cleanup, or any of the stuff that we covered today, not on stabilization, because we'll be covering that in the next episode, of course, but any of the stuff that we covered today, let me know down in the comments, and I'll do my best to get those answered for you. I think when it comes to Thaumcraft, understanding the stuff that we talked about this episode is about the most important part, because that and stabilization, and nothing can really go wrong once you understand those 2 concepts. I mean, that's basically at the core of Thaumcraft. That's what's there. That's Thaumcraft is seen as kind of, could be dangerous and you could mess things up. Not really. Not if you understand flux. Not if you understand warp, which is, sanity checker, and watch that. And nothing bad really comes from that. You might just have mob spawning, and I wouldn't let it get out of hand. I know Tyler had it really crazy high in Enigmatica, and he was loving all the sun scorch that he was getting. I do remember that, but yeah, and then you understand stabilization, you should be golden, I think, in terms of Thaumcraft. It's not as hard as it's made out to be a lot of times, I think. But yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. I want to make sure that if you have any questions, that they get answered, of course. Because this stuff is very important for Thaumcraft. So, yeah. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button, and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, to stay updated with when new videos come out. And I hope to see you guys next time. So until then, as always, do take care, stay safe. I'll see you guys then.